There is a subtle mistake, almost invisible at first glance, that many men make when they hug a woman, without ever realizing what it communicates on a deeper level. But the truth is, in those few seconds of physical contact, something important is being registered beneath words, beneath logic, beneath conscious thought. And it often has less to do with strength or confidence as people assume, and more to do with presence, awareness, and emotional grounding. Most men never get taught this. They learn how to talk, how to text, how to impress, but not how to exist in a moment of closeness without losing themselves in it. And that gap is where misunderstanding begins. In today's video, we're going to slow everything down and look at something simple that carries more psychological weight than most people realize. The way a hug is given, received, and released tells a story. Not to the thinking mind, but to something deeper. And once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. You'll begin to notice how certain interactions feel safe, grounded, and natural, while others feel slightly off, even if you can't explain why. And before we go any further, there's something important to understand. If you've ever done this wrong before, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It simply means no one ever broke this down in a way that made sense. Most people grow up learning social behavior by imitation, not understanding. So if this is new to you, there's no judgment here, only awareness. Because once awareness enters the picture, you can change everything about the way you show up in these moments. There's a deeper psychological principle at play here, something researchers in emotional neuroscience and attachment theory have studied for decades. Human beings don't just interpret words, they constantly interpret emotional signals, especially through touch. And touch bypasses verbal reasoning. It goes straight into the emotional processing centers of the brain, where feelings of safety, trust, discomfort, or tension are formed in milliseconds. A hug is not just a gesture, it is a message without language. After the second paragraph, I want you to pause for a moment and consider something personal. Most people watching this have had at least one moment where a simple interaction felt strangely significant, even if nothing happened on the surface. Maybe it was a hug that felt awkward, or one that felt unexpectedly warm and stayed in your mind longer than it should have. That's not random. That's your emotional memory doing its job. If this topic is resonating with you, leave a comment and share what you've noticed in your own experiences, because you're definitely not alone in this, and the patterns people share here are often more revealing than the explanation itself. There's also a social layer to this that most people overlook. When physical contact happens, especially in moments that carry emotional tone, the brain is not analyzing details individually. It's building an overall impression. And that impression is shaped by something psychologists often refer to as nonverbal coherence. In simple terms, it means your body, your energy, and your behavior are either aligned or they are not. And when they're not aligned, the other person feels it before they understand it. Sarah, host of What She Thinks YouTube channel. She often explains that attraction, comfort, and trust don't begin with grand gestures. They begin with micro moments. A glance held too briefly or too intensely, a pause that feels natural versus one that feels uncertain. And yes, even a hug that communicates presence or absence in a matter of seconds. Not because people are consciously judging it, but because the nervous system is constantly scanning for emotional safety. Now, let's slow this down even more and talk about what actually happens internally during a hug. When two people come into close physical proximity, the nervous system begins a rapid evaluation process. It assesses posture, tension, breathing patterns, and movement. Without conscious awareness, the body is asking questions like, is this safe? Is this person grounded? Are they fully here or mentally elsewhere? These questions are not verbal, but biological. And this is where things become interesting. Because most people assume confidence is about dominance or volume or assertiveness. But in moments like this, confidence is actually about stability. The ability to remain present without rushing, without overthinking, without collapsing inward or overextending outward. A hug becomes a mirror for that internal state. There are 3 common patterns that tend to show up in how people approach this moment, and each one communicates something different, even if unintentionally. The first is the kind of distance-filled interaction where the body never fully commits to the moment. It's brief, cautious, and slightly disconnected. The second swings in the opposite direction, where intensity replaces awareness, and the interaction becomes overwhelming rather than grounding. And the third is something more subtle, where the body is present, but the mind is elsewhere, and that disconnect creates a quiet sense of emotional absence. What's important to understand here is not judgment, but awareness. Because once you can recognize these patterns, you can shift them. And that shift is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming fully present in the moment you are already in. And this is where we begin to explore what actually changes everything. Not in theory, but in real interaction. Because there is a way to bring grounding into these moments that completely transforms how they feel for both people involved. It is not about performance. It is about alignment between body and intention. In the next part, we will go deeper into what creates that sense of grounded presence, how timing and breathing completely change the emotional experience, and why small adjustments in awareness can completely shift how you are perceived in moments of closeness. What most people never realize is that the difference between a forgettable moment and a memorable one is rarely about what is said. It's about how fully someone is present inside the experience while it is happening. When a person is grounded, their body stops sending mixed signals. There is no hesitation in the movement, no internal conflict leaking outward, no rushed escape from the moment. And in physical closeness, that kind of internal stillness becomes something the other person can feel without needing to interpret it. Presence is not something you perform, it is something you return to. And in the context of a hug, it shows up in the simplest details. The way your shoulders settle instead of tightening, the way your breath doesn't get held or interrupted, the way your body doesn't rush to end the interaction just to escape discomfort. These are small things, but the nervous system reads them instantly, long before the mind forms any kind of opinion. And this is where many men unknowingly lose the moment. Not because they lack confidence in a traditional sense, but because they disconnect from themselves right when connection is happening. They either overthink the interaction, or they rush through it, or they try to control how it is being perceived. And in doing so, they leave the present moment emotionally. But when someone stays grounded, something shifts. The interaction becomes steady. Not intense, not forced, not uncertain, just steady. And steadiness is what the human nervous system associates with safety. This is not abstract psychology. It is biological conditioning shaped over thousands of years of human evolution. The body is constantly scanning for signals that say, "You can relax here." Now think about your own experiences for a moment. Most people can remember at least one interaction where they felt unexpectedly comfortable around someone, even if they barely knew them. And on the flip side, they can also remember moments where something felt slightly off, even though nothing obvious happened. That difference usually comes down to presence. Not charm, not appearance, not words. Presence. If you're recognizing that in your own memory, take a moment and share it in the comments, because these subtle experiences are often more universal than people think, and seeing them out loud helps connect the pattern. There is also something deeper happening in these moments that psychology refers to as emotional synchronization. When two people are physically close, their breathing patterns, micro-movements, and even heart rate variability can begin to subtly influence each other. This is why calmness is contagious, and so is tension. You are not just interacting with someone else's body, you are interacting with their internal state. And this is where we come back to awareness. Because once you understand that your internal state is being communicated without words, the focus shifts away from, "What do I do with my hands?" to, "What state am I in right now?" That single shift changes everything. A grounded hug, the kind that feels natural and complete, is not about technique. It is about timing and internal clarity. You move when you are ready, not when you are uncertain. You stay present while the moment is happening, not mentally rehearsing the next step. And when it ends, you do not escape it, you complete it. Now, the way a moment ends is just as important as how it begins. Many people unintentionally break the emotional flow by abruptly pulling away or by lingering too long in hesitation. But a complete interaction has a sense of closure. Not emotional withdrawal, but clean transition. A natural release that feels intentional rather than avoidant. One simple way to understand this is to think of it as emotional punctuation. Some interactions end like a sharp full stop, sudden and disconnected. Others end like a trailing sentence that never quite finishes. But the most grounded interactions end like a calm period, clear, settled, and complete. In practice, this means allowing the moment to exist fully without rushing it, and then releasing it without hesitation. Not clinging, not escaping, just transitioning. And that transition is where impression often forms most strongly. There is also a subtle but powerful exercise you can try in everyday life to build this awareness. The next time you greet someone you trust, instead of thinking about how you are being perceived, simply bring your attention to your breath and your physical stance. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice whether your body is tense or relaxed, and allow the interaction to exist without mentally narrating it. At first, it may feel unfamiliar, but over time, this becomes natural grounding. Another helpful reflection is this: are you entering interactions to be validated, or are you entering them already anchored in yourself? Because validation-seeking energy often creates subtle tension, even when everything appears normal on the surface. And that tension is what people pick up on, even if they cannot explain it. And now we arrive at what many people consider the fourth type of interaction, the one that is rarely spoken about directly, not because it is complicated, but because it is simple in a way that cannot be faked. It is not about stronger physicality or more technique. It is about full presence without internal noise. This kind of interaction feels different because nothing in it is rushed or exaggerated. There is no uncertainty being hidden and no overcompensation being displayed. It feels clear. And clarity is surprisingly rare in human interaction. Most people are somewhere between trying to impress and trying to protect themselves. Very few are simply present. And that is why it leaves a lasting impression. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is clean. The nervous system remembers clean experiences because they feel safe. And safety is what the mind unconsciously returns to when it thinks about someone later. The truth is, most people underestimate how much emotional memory is shaped in seconds, not hours. A short interaction can stay in someone's mind longer than a long conversation, simply because of how it felt in the body. And feeling is always faster than thought. So when you understand this, the goal is no longer to do the perfect hug. The goal becomes to be fully present in the moment you are already in. Because presence is not something you add, it is something you stop interrupting. And if there is one thing to take away from all of this, it is that every moment of physical closeness is also a moment of communication. Not through words, but through state. And your state is always speaking. If this video helped you see something differently, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who might benefit from it, and subscribe for more content like this. And I want to hear from you too, because real understanding grows through shared experience. Have you ever felt a moment like this where something simple stayed in your memory longer than expected? Share it in the comments, and let's explore it together. Because sometimes, the smallest moments are the ones that reveal the most about how we connect, how we feel, and how we understand each other without ever saying a word.